back, ladies and gentlemen, to Kodiak Copper's channel. Joining us today is Lana Eagle. Welcome.
Good morning.
Now,
And thank you for having me as your guest.
It's such a pleasure. So this is going to be an interesting endeavor because basically you were recently added to the board as an addition for the Indigenous Relation Strategist, if I'm saying that correctly. And I think this is a really important key topic because, I mean, we see kind of the Indigenous stuff come into play with a lot of the oil and pipelines, but I don't think people think how much that reminisces in the mining sector with a lot of the land exposure. But before we kind of dabble down into that, I kind of want to hear about yourself. So how did you kind of come about to get involved with Kodiak?
Well, I've been involved in the mining industry for quite a few years now, and I am an Uber volunteer, so I sit on the boards of the Association for Mineral Exploration, Geoscience BC, as well as PDAC. I've just been recently elected to their board, and I've always had that focus on building relationships with Indigenous people and the importance of engaging early. So recently, it was recommended because I think Claudia, the president and CEO, was looking for, in addition to their board with respect to ESG, inclusion and diversity, and, as you say, Indigenous relationships are starting to take, more of a key role in our industry today. And certainly with a lot of what's been happening on the news regarding the finding, the discovery of unmarked graves of children at residential schools, I think this has really captured the hearts and minds of non-Indigenous people in Canada. And so people want to better understand why it's important to know this history, why it's important to build relationships with people where who may occupy the lands where a project development is taking place. And this certainly didn't, it reached out to people like Claudia and her board of directors that this was important. It's a key way to advance the project by working with Indigenous people. And what that really means is having conversations, not being afraid to engage, and finding out what the real issues are to advance the project. So when they approached me, when Claudia approached me, I became very interested quite quickly because of their openness and their willingness to work with Indigenous people.
That's incredible. So what's your exact experience kind of leading into this kind of nuanced sector almost of people just trying to obviously expand that broader awareness? What kind of led you into the mining sector specifically, and kind of your past experience leading up to this?
Well, from a family point of view, my dad was a miner for pretty well much of my life. And so, there was always a dinner talk around the table about his friends and people he worked with. And I think that kind of drew me in because there were really good stories. And I got to realize after a while that really workplace is about people and how we relate to one another, how we work with one another, how we feel inclusive. And then I went to work in the early 2000s. I worked for a First Nation here on Vancouver Island. And it was through that process that I became more aware of mining and the opportunity to work as a consultant with a mining company. And it began to open many doors for me with respect to engaging with First Nation communities on the side of industry. And that's where I've worked from, for the last 15 years, is working on the side of industry, helping to build those relationships. Well, as I understand, there are already people on the ground working on those relationships with Indigenous communities. I think my role is to guide the company in terms of better understanding. And it's not that there's a level of misunderstanding. It's not that at all. It's just how we make decisions going forward. And especially, now that we're in an environment where ESG is predominantly becoming important, is how do we share that news about the company and what we're doing and what we're endeavoring to do with investors, and so they understand our project and how important it is to work with Indigenous people. So there's still a lot of work to be done, because I think even ESG is trying to figure it out, in terms of a standard. And I know that the social side of it in ESG is still a large component that is, while it's recognized it's really important, it may not really be focused on Indigenous communities. And so how do we make that more prominent and certainly appropriate and acceptable? Because Indigenous people, feel that it's important to be heard, to be understood. And certainly, if, to move a project forward, I think this is really key in having Indigenous people on side with the project.
I would completely agree. And I really appreciate your insights today, Lana.
Thank you.
So we look forward to catching up with you in the near term future. But in light of this, stay cool, stay awesome.
Okay.
And we'll catch you in the next one.
Okay. Thanks, Kyle. Take care.